Today, we're going to get into the absolutely wild story of Miles Guo. He's a fugitive Chinese billionaire who convinced his followers he was this great warrior for democracy. But according to federal prosecutors, he was actually running one of the most massive and cynical fraud schemes in recent American history. His sentencing is coming up, and honestly, the details of this case are just stranger than fiction.
So to really wrap your head around just how bizarre this story is, we have to start with a question. What on earth could a fugitive Chinese billionaire and a legendary hip-hop mogul possibly have in common?
The answer? They're both in the same Brooklyn jail, they're writing character letters for each other, and they're apparently planning a post-prison AI startup together. And if you think that sounds unbelievable, just stick with me. This is all pulled directly from federal court documents. It's real. So how did we get to a jailhouse AI startup? I mean, really. To understand that, we have to rewind and look at the powerful, charismatic public image that Miles Guo carefully built for himself. See, he wasn't just some investor, he was a warrior. Okay, so who exactly is Guo Wengui? Well, he was one of China's richest men before he fled the country back in 2014. It was right in the middle of a big anti-corruption crackdown. Now, the Chinese government accused him of some really serious crimes, but Guo's story was completely different. He said it was all fake, that he was a whistleblower getting punished for exposing high-level corruption. So he lands in New York, asks for political asylum, and totally reinvents himself as the #1 warrior fighting the Chinese Communist Party.
And he made his followers a promise, an absolutely certain ironclad promise. He was broadcasting daily to hundreds of thousands of people who hung on his every word. He told them point blank, you will not lose a single dollar. It wasn't just an investment, it was a personal vow from their leader.
And here is the gut punch, the billion-dollar betrayal. While his followers were wiring him their life savings, truly believing they were funding a democratic revolution, that $1 billion was being funneled into a life of almost unimaginable luxury. We're talking about a 50,000 square foot mansion, $1 million cars, and a massive $37 million yacht. The promise of safety? It was all a lie. So this is the really crucial part. This wasn't just some simple financial scam. This was about weaponizing belief. He didn't just target random people. He built a community of true believers, people who trusted him with their lives, and then he exploited their deepest convictions for cash. And the fraud was built in 4 key stages. First, he spent years building the movement, using thousands of videos to create this sense of absolute trust. Then he launched these investment companies, GTV Media and the Himalaya Exchange. But he didn't sell them as businesses, he sold them as political weapons to fight the CCP. Third, he made those impossible promises, saying their money was safe, guaranteed by his own personal fortune. And then finally, step 4, all that money got funneled directly to him. Prosecutors even played a tape in court of him screaming at an employee to move $100 million faster. So what you have are these 2 completely opposite realities. The public persona was the righteous dissident, the brave anti-CCP warrior, the champion of democracy. But what a federal jury just convicted him of being? A racketeer, which means he was running an ongoing criminal enterprise, a fraudster, and a money launderer. It was a complete house of cards, from top to bottom. Now, to pull off a scam this huge in the US, Guo needed a bridge. He needed a way to give his schemes a stamp of American legitimacy. And, well, he found one in a very, very high-profile political operative. And you just can't tell this story without talking about Steve Bannon. Prosecutors showed evidence that Guo paid Bannon $1 million. He was essentially buying Bannon's credibility to help promote these schemes to an American audience. And then, in a twist that you just couldn't make up, Bannon himself was arrested by federal agents while he was on Guo's yacht for a completely separate fraud case. He was later pardoned by President Trump, but still, the scene is just incredible. But you know, beyond all the crazy headlines about billionaires and political operatives and yachts, there's the most important part of this entire story, the human cost. Who were the people that lost everything, and what did they really lose? What Guo committed is what's known as an affinity fraud. It's one of the most disgusting types of scams because it specifically targets people based on a shared identity. In this case, Chinese immigrants and dissidents who had fled the very government that Guo claimed to be fighting. He exploited the instant trust that came from their shared enemy.
And this quote, this gets to the very heart of the betrayal. For the victims, it wasn't just about losing their life savings. It was the crushing, profound shame of knowing that your deepest convictions, your fight for democracy, your very identity as a dissident was used as the weapon to exploit you.
Which brings us right back to where we started this whole thing, that jail cell in Brooklyn. Because while he's awaiting sentencing, Guo's story takes one final, unbelievable turn.
Turns out, he's been sharing a facility with none other than Sean Diddy Combs.
Okay, get this. In a formal letter to the court, Guo praises a jailhouse business course that Diddy started. And then he reveals that the two of them have been talking about launching an AI platform together once they get out. Let me say that again. A convicted billion-dollar fraudster and a hip-hop mogul awaiting trial are planning a tech startup from behind bars. This is all from an actual court filing.
So what happens next? After a U.S. judge decides how many years Guo will spend in an American prison, there is an even bigger question looming, one that will decide the entire rest of his life.
Let's just look at the timeline. This has been going on for years. Back in 2017, China put out that Interpol notice for his arrest. Fast forward to 2024, he gets convicted here in the U.S. His sentencing hearing is scheduled for April 2026, probably because the financials of the case are just so complex. And then, after he serves his time, the U.S. government has a massive decision to make. Do they deport him back to China, the very country he claims wants him dead?
And so that's the final, massive question mark hanging over this whole story. After serving his sentence for $1 billion fraud in America, will Miles Guo be put on a plane and sent back to face the government he spent years railing against? What on earth is waiting for him in China? In a story this wild, his ultimate fate is truly the great unknown.